Hello. Right. Well, welcome, Laura Valenti, to
Yes,
the
hello.
listening. Great to meet you. This is the first time we've ever met, so that's quite exciting. I like this sort of just. I've just met you, and there's this incredible opportunity to connect with another human being, which is always exciting for me. So where are you today? Give us some
Yeah.
background on where you are.
Well, first of all, hello and thank you for having me here today with you. Um, I am in Italy, actually. I usually don't live here. I live in southern Spain, as I shared before, where we have common friends. And now I am in my childhood home, actually, because my dad had a stroke a couple of weeks ago. So as soon as I heard the news, I came home and I'm still here doing my best to support his journey to recovery and learning, as you can imagine, in the childhood home, a lot of things quite profoundly. Yeah.
Mm. So when were you last living there properly?
Oof, gosh. Ah, more than 20 years ago, 24 years ago, 24, 25. Yeah. Yeah.
So is
Long
this the
time.
longest amount of time you've spent at home since you left home?
No, it's not the longest yet. However, throughout the years, I haven't spent a lot of time here. Maybe last summer was one of the longest times I spent ever, which it was a month and a half. Yeah.
And what's it like to be in your childhood home then? Is it bringing up all kinds of memories? What's kind of
Mm,
going on for you personally? Obviously, you've got the situation with your dad, but
mm, mm,
what is it? Is it kind of bringing up anything interesting for you?
mm. It is actually. I mean, it's very interesting that you're asking this question because I was talking to somebody else earlier on, somebody who is a mentor for me and an elder. And we were having a conversation around the opportunity and the gift, actually, that is for me to be in this childhood home where a lot of things happened and they're pretty much connected also to my soul journey, if you wish, and also to wounds and memories, and to the opportunity now to harvest some memory, also in relationship to the connection I have with my dad, which it has never been an easy one. So it's a very profound time. It's challenging, not comfortable all the time. Uh, but there is depth and medicine to it, that's for sure.
And what about the sort of the land around and the is it a town you're in? Where are you
It
exactly?
is a town.
Yeah.
It's called Latina. It's a sort of funky environment. It's a strange urban place. It's about an hour away from Rome,
Okay.
and yeah, and we are close to the sea. So it's urban, but there is the amazing opportunity to be 10 minutes away from the sea. And some of the beaches, not just the beaches close to town, maybe just 20 minutes away, are really beautiful. And there are very unique natural surroundings. Actually, there is a national park, and there are salty lakes and dunes, and also there is the promontory of Circeo, which evokes also the magical story of Circe
I don't
in
know
uh,
the story.
in
What's
Uli.
this?
Well, she was mentioned and named, I believe, in the history, in the tales of Odysseus, and
Okay.
Ulysses.
Hmm.
She's the one who turned the man into pigs in an island. She was a witch and an herbalist. So there is something mythical equally about this land, which is very interesting. Yeah.
So is that story something that you relate to personally in some way? Do you have a kind of connection with it, or?
Well, I read a book in the summer, and I can't remember now the name of the woman who wrote it, who was a contemporary interpretation of this history, which is connected actually to Greek mythology as well. So what I connect to, it's is the landscape in all the sensory as well stimulation that brings in terms of colors and smells, particularly in summer where everything becomes very intense. You know, the smell of the pines, the smell of certain plants from Mediterranean, you know, Mediterranean landscape that evoke in me a sort of sense of belonging and rootedness, which I had forgotten because I led a semi-nomadic life in the last 20 years, even if I've been based in various places, London included, but I moved a lot as well, lived in different countries and spent time in South America. And sometimes I forgot what it means to be an Italian woman, even because, particularly when I was younger, I disconnected from this particular environment and the city and the culture. The rebel in me fought against it, So in the last years, I started this inquiry once I settled somewhere else in Spain in terms of what does it mean to have roots.
Mm.
So there is something I resonate with, the beauty of the landscape, the colors, the sea, the dunes, and the promontory actually is very unique. It has a very unique shape and it's very little, but it's very steep and there is a thick forest. There's something beautiful that awakens my imagination.
So does that sort of take you back to childhood? Did you have experiences of the landscape that were very powerful or kind
Yes,
of
yes,
formative in some way?
yeah, it does. It's funny you asked this question, and I'm feeling like goosebumps and tingling, on my neck and my body and my spine while you say that,
Me
because there
too.
is, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there is something that I remember about the smells
Mhm.
actually, and this particular smell of the Mediterranean woods and the pines. I don't know exactly the word in English, but it's the Macchia mediterranea with Pino silvestre is the tree. And I remember,
So that's it's a Mediterranean version or variety of the Scots pine, I think.
probably, I would say so. Yeah.
The Latin for the Scots pine is the same without the maritima bit.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that smell, that
Mm-hmm.
resinous smell of pine. I've been to Italy a couple of times, and that's one of the strongest memories I have
Mm-hmm.
is the smell of the trees in the summer, in
Mm-hmm.
the heat, in the dry heat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's so it's such an intoxicating smell. It's a wonderful
Mm-hmm.
smell. I mean, for me anyway, and I
Yeah.
have a very strong association now
Mm-hmm.
with that. And it's interesting you're talking about pines because where I live on the edge of some woodland here in England, and it's the trees immediately around where I live were planted as part of a forestry plantation
Mm-hmm.
in the 50s, and they're all a variety of pine called Corsican pine, which
Mm-hmm.
obviously comes from the Mediterranean
Mm-hmm.
originally. So when we do, and we often get quite dry weather here, so if we get a dry, hot summer, I get some of that kind of smell
Mm-hmm.
as well. So and this whole process of you going home now and you're the other side of your kind of youthful rebellion
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and now you're going back home and obviously there's all the kind of family dynamic of what's
Mm-hmm.
happening with your dad and that brings up your own kind of sense of mortality I guess as well
Mm-hmm.
but this opportunity to kind of go back to those formative experiences and to kind of reconnect with the place where you live, is that something that you're now consciously going into? Because it's obviously just kind of happened, but has this kind of made you want to sort of find out something, or kind of recover something, or can you talk more about what that's brought up about, especially in relationship to the place, the land? Because that really
Well,
interests me,
mhm.
you know, personally.
Well, I feel that connection to the land brings me it brings me in a place where I can resource myself more, basically. You know, if I go back in the past, in the memories, the memories that I retrieve about the smells are pretty much related to magic, actually. You know, I just can remember the sense of possibility, the openness, you know, everything was alive, the connection to the spirit of nature, you know, to to the mystery, you know. So all that components are still very present in my life. And as I find myself in a situation where I also experience many challenges, I feel the connection to nature, it's key. In fact, when my dad, I think it was the day before my dad was in surgery, and you can imagine that, you know, with the COVID situation now, I couldn't go to the
Yeah,
hospital.
horrible.
I could, it was awful,
Mm.
highly traumatizing,
Yeah, yeah.
to be honest, you know. So I traveled and I brought with me all the things that I feel are essential to my well-being, beside my plants and essential oils and all of that. And I brought my drum. So before my dad went to surgery, I went to the beach. It was a very windy day, and cold and windy, you know, and I sat there and I sang.
Mm.
So for me to sit by the sea was wonderful, you know, soothing, healing, reassuring, inspiring, and it was a way also to ask somewhat, you know, for for protection, for well-being, to be in communication with the water, and trusting also the invisible realm, you know, which is so much wiped away in our society and contemporary culture, particularly the Western one, where we only do believe and trust in that which is tangible. So for me, that is a way to also practice communication with invisible forces, and knowing that if I send out a call and a prayer, that I'm being held and heard and received.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's very interesting to me, because this is something that I've been doing, but only quite recently. Um, this idea of seeking help and support and guidance, or whatever resource you need in that way, from something greater than yourself,
Mm-hmm.
something. And and for me, it almost doesn't really matter what that is, or to try and explain it, because I do think for me it's very much a mystery. It's a
Mm-hmm.
mysterious idea, but it has a very real, there's a very real sense of it being there for me. And I've been accessing it through the landscape as well. There are two. I have a place nearby. There's a field just next to the woods, next to where I live, and in that field, it's a farmer's field that has crops in usually. But there's one tree. There's an oak tree
Mm-hmm.
in the field on its own that used to be, years and years ago, there must have been a hedgerow, but all the hedgerow's been removed and ploughed in. So you've just got this tree on its own in the field, this beautiful oak tree that, to me, just feels like it's feminine.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very strong sense of the feminine. And then opposite this tree, on the edge of the field, there's a small area of land which has a pond in it that's kind of been left by the farm, and it's a bit wild. It's got trees and shrubs, and there's a big old ash tree there, and that one feels very masculine. So I've got these kind of parents, that I go and see occasionally, you know, and I'll just go and lean against them and feel that kind of energetic connection. I mean, trees are so energized and very different, you know. They really, I'm beginning to become more sensitive to it, and there's a real sense of personality I'm getting from different trees. But I often just go and either, depending on what I'm asking for or the help I need, or just even someone just to hear what I want to say without even needing anything back sometimes. I'll go to the sort of the mother tree or the father tree, or sometimes I'll go to both, you know, asking a similar question, but, you know, maybe getting a different sort of sense of something back. But that, tell me about how you discovered that for yourself, or what kind of led you to this particular practice, because I'm quite fascinated by it now, because it's something quite new to me, but it's really helped in a lot of ways. I mean, you know, that's why I do it, really.
Oof, I don't know how to yeah, I'm smiling. I don't know exactly how to distill an answer. It has been a journey, you know. I think a little bit, as I shared before, as a child, I had a sense, you know, of the connection with flowers and trees and woods, and you know, and then life happened and other things happened. And yet I remember that also when I was studying philosophy at school, the theories that I would resonate the most with very intuitively were the theories that would speak about everything being alive, everything being sacred. The interesting thing it is that if you approach, or I remember this from school, you know, if you would approach this in a textbook, those kind of spiritual cosmologies, if you want, that would be approached as folklore. So that is a label already that is sort of dismissive, you know, and saying like, oh, this is not real, you know, it's not religion, it's not real philosophy. This is just, you know, believe. So yeah, or the folks who live in the countryside. So somewhat I always had an interest, and maybe also because of family circumstances. My mother, she died when I was very little. She died in this house where I am now. So, and perhaps the rebel spirit, which I mentioned before, led me also very earlier on in life to experiment with drugs and alcohol and things, you know, of different kind, which it also had a quite self-destructive component, you know. However, there was a component, and maybe because I was a little bit romantic, or because I remember reading, you know, Baudelaire or Rousseau, what was the name of the other one? Baudelaire, Rimbaud, sorry, not Rousseau. It was a rationalist, so Rimbaud, you know, who would go in search of, you know, a metaphysical experience or ecstasy or something that couldn't be named by rationality, you know. So I was already on this quest, and when I was younger, also I always loved dancing and moving my body. So while I was searching, you know, then I started to connect to various paths that led me to learn from people and inquiry and investigate until I had cancer when I was in my 30s. So that inquiry, you know, deepened even more. And that led me to have an encounter with my teachers. They live in England, actually. Susanna and Jakob Darling Khan, they're the founders of the School of Movement Medicine, which it has been my main practice for many, many years. And movement medicine is a movement practice that brings together movement and also contemporary therapeutic wisdom and Gestalt therapy, neuroscience, and also some contemporary shamanic practice. even if nowadays shamanic practice is an expression that I don't resonate with for other reasons I may say later. I prefer the expression earth-based spirituality and animism because of contemporary issues related to cultural appropriation and so on. And so my teachers, they have been in this quest themselves, and they have been apprentices to various medicine people in different parts of the world. And they also have a strong connection to the rainforest, particularly in Ecuador. So I had the opportunity to travel there and spend some time in the rainforest, where there are, as you can imagine, I don't know if you travel there, not only amazing trees, but also trees that have a very specific role, physically, spiritually, in the well-being of the community. People obviously who live in contact with nature, who have an oral tradition, and who haven't forgotten how to live in harmony, have so much that they can teach us, because in that kind of context, everything has a spirit, and every kind of spirit also has a specific task eventually, from the little worm beside the material task, biologically, that animals and insects and plants may have. So I had also the privilege in life of meeting people and traveling myself in South America and being on a healing journey, because I had cancer, where I felt that somewhat I wanted to be in a quest where my search for meaning was connected to restoring connection with the sacred through connection with nature. Because I believe that most of the uh, psychological problems, neurosis, you name it, depression, that we live, especially in this part of the world, are rooted in our disconnection, not only from each other, but from nature as a living being. We're just so brainwashed, that if we think that, I don't know, that we could talk to a tree, somebody would think we're crazy, or that, we could ask and receive a sign from a cloud, or that we can give thanks to the water, or that we can receive a blessing through a synchronicity because maybe there is a bird, hovering above us, you name it, it's infinite possibilities. And I think that it's very important for our evolution to reclaim this sensitivity in our bones and in our bodies, because we are made of the same material. So I am equally made of water, air, and earth, and fire, and I'm made of carbon and other molecules that live in nature. So I am nature too. So there are many correspondences and metaphors and poetic images, if you want, that you can use to really play with the imagination, because I don't think that it's a linear journey, but for me, it's vital. Yeah.
So yeah, this idea of, or not even an idea, this very lived experience of plants, animals, places, bits of the river, boulders, having personality and spirit, and being these really living intelligences, even more than living things, being these kind of intelligences or members of your community. Such a different way of being in a place. And part of my journey here, I've been here for almost 20 years, not quite, but I've been living very closely with the land. And I've been learning so much of that and getting a glimpse of what that might be to live in that relationship in that way, and getting a real deep sense of just the importance and the fundamental wellness that it brings to people. It's a huge, huge part that's missing from our lives at the moment. And most of what we're looking for, most of the holes that we all carry around, would be filled and overflowing from a relationship and a connection that you're talking about. That a few people are still hanging on in the world because we haven't quite got to them, although, you know, we're trying our best to get in there and get our hands on what they have, you know. But it's so heartening to hear that for me, because I'm also realizing that wherever you are in the world, if you start to drop down first into your body, then in, you know, through your senses into the landscape where you live, that energy is just there. That those relationships are waiting patiently for you to show up. And it doesn't matter where you are. You can, even if you're in the middle of a city, there are still trees, there's the odd bird, there's probably a river, a huge, you know, personality just flowing through your city that you may not even have noticed anymore, or you've forgotten about. So there's plenty of opportunity. But it's something that we notice more, it seems, as children. You know, that seems to be the time when we do know about that and have relationships like that. But then it's very quickly culturally removed, or, you know, you're trained out of you, or whatever it is. Some of us hold on to it, clearly, you know, and it's nice to hear you're sort of being reawakened to that in a very particular way, as in where you grew up and where you're from, because there are clearly energies and aspects to that that make up who you are. You know, they're foundational. What the thing that comes up for me when I hear you talking is what and you don't have to talk about this obviously, but what's your understanding now, given everything that you've experienced and been through, about what happened with you when you got cancer? What do you think was the cause of that, or the causes, or what's your kind of understanding, having lived through it, and you know it intimately, and you've got this very wide perspective, it seems to me, from what little I've heard you say already. So what is your understanding of what happened there?
Well, it is not a linear answer, obviously, as
Sure.
you can imagine. The first thing I can tell you is that I had it in the same age in which my mother died. So she died when she was 34. I had cancer when I was 33. So the first thing I thought when I was diagnosed, I was like, okay, this cannot be a coincidence, you know? So there is something, I feel there is something that was connected to my lineage, and also to the choice, or to the destiny that my mother had of dying so young, you know. And oftentimes, I'm sure you know about this, there are children, in fact, who died in the same age when one of the parents died. And apparently it's even more common when there is the same sex, so mother, daughter, son, father. And then another thing I can say, it is that it was a non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and it affected my thymus gland. So it was very much in my heart area. Yeah. So another metaphor that I used already at that time was related to, and actually it's not even just a metaphor, but it was related also to grieving. The grief of losing my mom at such young age, and what it meant for a child and an adolescent and a young person to grow up and to live without a mother. And also because when that happened, it was in the 80s, and in Italy, which it was a quite, you know, traditional country and culture. Those weren't years where therapy was common as it is now. So basically the family, also because of the way she died of aneurysm, so from one day to another one. So imagine the shock in the family that she was alive one day and the day after she was gone. So it was pure chaos and havoc and tragedy, basically. So what happened in all of that, it was that they, many of them, my father and other family members, they didn't know very well how to relate. There wasn't such education to relate to a small person who lost their mom. So I grew up basically in a situation where they didn't know how to cope with my grief and my questions and me being sad. So all those emotions have been pretty much squashed and smashed down. In fact, I even, oh dear, sorry, I need to take a breath because just a memory that came.
Sure.
Yeah. I just remembered now, connected to what I was about to say, that they used to tell me, just smile and be happy and all of that. And I mean, I know I was lucky as a child, don't get me wrong. And I found actually a notebook this last summer when I was here. And I couldn't believe my eyes when I read what I wrote. You know, I must have been 8 years old or something. And I wrote something like, I learned not to complain about my mom being dead, and I'm lucky, and I shouldn't be really sad. It was on that kind of tone, and it made me so. I felt so gutted, you know, when I read it, and I felt so sad for that little person still living inside me, you know, which. I feel also now that in this journey with cancer, connecting to the grief and expressing in it, and having the stability to hold it and be with that, because I didn't have that capacity in my nervous system when I was younger, which
Sure.
I developed later in life. So it's like, as I said, it's a spiral or it's an onion, as many say. There are many layers to be peeled in that grief too. And there is also something related about holding different inner parts in the heart of the little person and the young child, and you know, the magical child or the wounded child, or that part that is really sad and will always be, you know. So I understand also that it's not about fixing. Is about, for me, is about holding and being with the intensity of it sometimes and move with it. So what I did when I was diagnosed, I've done a few things. One, it was to go immediately to therapy, done also a couple of family constellation, you know, sessions, and then I danced.
Wow.
And used my voice. So I used to say I danced my socks off. So movement, creativity, expression was key in my journey in this adventure, you know.
Yeah, let's get into that a little bit, because that's a really powerful thing to talk into. Just first of all, when you move, I don't know if it's your microphone, but it's crackling all the time.
Sorry. Yeah.
I don't know if there's a
I'll
way.
hold it. Yeah. Could you?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just when you move, it crackles.
Yeah.
But don't worry.
Yeah, it's like when I get really passionate with fire, then I tend to move.
You got to move. No, that's good. No, but don't make it awkward, so you have to hold it. If it can't be fixed, it doesn't matter. It's not terrible.
Okay.
It's just a little bit.
I'll be more still.
No, you can't do that. We're about to talk about dancing. So let's talk about movement and kind of and in your whole journey with movement, because dancing and all these kind of movement practices, which it's wonderful that they're becoming more and more widespread, and people are, people have always danced, obviously, even in the West, but the tradition, I don't know how it was in Italy, but in England it was mostly when people got drunk they would dance, not when they're sober, which is a great tragedy because, and even I guess my introduction to dancing was in that way too, was when I was going out as a teenager in Manchester where I grew up,
Mm-hmm.
it was all about, yeah, you know, there was drink and drugs, but
Mm-hmm.
even then, even behind the kind of veil of whatever substances were sort of clouding or enhancing reality, my earliest experiences of dancing were so ecstatic,
Mm-hmm.
so kind of joyful,
Mm-hmm.
and it cut right through all of that. And it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
until much later that I realized, oh, I could do the dancing without all that stuff and have an even better time, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and no hangover or any of that. So talk a bit about your discovery. I mean, you said you danced as a child,
Mm-hmm.
and that was obviously your way into that, was it?
Yeah.
But talk more about what you've learned about
Mm-hmm.
dancing and movement,
Mm-hmm.
and how it can
Mm-hmm.
help
Yeah.
people with all kinds
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
situations.
Yeah. I mean, this is really my main field of inquiry, you know, personally and professionally. Um, it is one of the earliest memories I have to self-soothe, actually, to relieve stress, is dancing. You know, I used to, in this house, I used to lock myself in the living room and go bananas to actually to heavy metal, which it was quite unusual, you know, for a 9-year-old child. You know, people would think that I was really weird, and that wasn't really acceptable for a nice little girl. um,
So what are we talking? AC/DC, that kind of thing?
AC/DC, even Black Sabbath,
Yeah, yeah.
Dio, Van Halen, and Guns N' Roses. They were already, you know, they were more, you know, even bland compared to the Iron Maiden, that kind of stuff, you know. So I just have this memory of my body trembling and going really, really, you know, full on bananas, full spectrum of movements, and making myself really tired.
Mm.
So I think, you know, intuitively, that was my way to also just allow stress to, you know, leave a little bit my system, because I was overloaded with stress. Also because of the nature of the household. I grew up very traditional, a bit strict, a bit serious, you know, and all of that. So, and I was a very lively child. So I remember feeling oppressed since a very young age. So from that, then I shifted into drugs and alcohol, as you said as well. And then I went clubbing, you know, searching for ecstasy through that, until I realized that that wasn't very much of a good idea at one point. That's because I didn't know how to use those substances medicinally, and then I would mix it with alcohol. So terrible idea. And then it was in my mid 20s, I actually met, I would say, an original form of ecstatic dance, really, I would say, native to Italy, which belongs to the family of pizzica, tarantella, and tamurriata. And these dances are dances that are accompanied by the drum. Depending on the dance, there is a different style of drum and a different rhythm. Some of those rhythms can become really, really fast. And there is also a very interesting history that has been researched, and storytelling that has been researched also by anthropologists, to tell the story of these dances that were forms for people to come together, to heal, to connect to nature, and to also to embrace a natural form of trance, an altered state of consciousness, where they would invoke their relationship with the divine and the divinity. What happened, it was that then the church came, obviously, because we're talking about traditions that have thousands of years.
Yeah.
So the tradition had to come and obviously had to encapsulate, or, you know, control the tradition, because there was no way to eradicate it. So they had to include a couple of saints and, you know, a couple of rules and pilgrimages to the church. And I've seen documentaries actually showing that this tradition in the south of Italy, or one of those two, because some are still very alive, some others disappeared, where the images were truly remarkable. to see what was happening. And another thing that was happening in that setting, it was that social taboos were broken. There was a collective holding of what we would define as madness. And because it was held by the community and by the circle of people coming together, there was one time of the year where that was becoming socially acceptable. Yeah.
Wow.
So
As you're talking, I'm getting shivers now
I have
because
it too. I
I
have it
can
too.
feel how powerful that is.
Yeah.
Where the community,
Mm-hmm.
all those people that you know,
Mm-hmm.
witness to it and are allowing it to happen.
Yeah.
And you can express anything that needs to come out, and
Yeah.
it's being accepted by everyone. That's
Mm-hmm.
so important. It's not, oh, the kids who get together and do this.
Yeah.
The whole community
Yeah.
gets to be there, gets to participate. These things are some of the most powerful technologies that we
Mm-hmm.
haven't got in our culture
Mm-hmm.
in a whole sense. I mean, they're starting to reappear
Yeah.
through people like yourself who are kind of awakening this sort of ancient knowledge. But there's something so profound about these things when you talk
Mm-hmm.
about them, and so moving because
Mm-hmm.
every cell in my body recognizes how healthy
Mm-hmm.
having something like that is in a community.
Mm-hmm.
Um, talk a little bit about the actual dancing. So,
Mm-hmm.
because the reason it works is there is this kind of repetition
Yeah.
of the drumming. There is,
Yeah.
and when you dance and dance and dance, after a certain amount of time,
Mm-hmm.
something changes.
Yeah.
Talk about a bit more about that for people who maybe haven't
Yeah.
ever had an
Yeah.
experience like that.
So
Explain what
yeah.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are obviously many components and many layers to it that actually nowadays are also explained by neuroscience for sure, and how our nervous system works and how our body responds to trauma, and freeze response in the body, fight or flight. There are many, many layers. So, and I'm also talking about various strands of dance. So what I have been sharing until now is related to these Italian traditions on the drum. So just to to answer your question in relation to the drum, to the dance which is connected to the drum, something happens actually in our brain through certain beats and certain repetitions. So this kind of drumming, it is actually very, very repetitive. So that is going to create an entrainment in the brain where eventually the brain waves are going to change. So because we naturally have the capacity to enter in this state. So to an extent, it's also quite simple. And also these dances, even if there are various families under this big umbrella, also in Italy, so I'm talking about 2 or 3 different things, but in general, they also have very specific movements, even if usually they have structure, but also they have a lot of freedom.
Right.
And these movements are connected to the drum, which is a naturally grounding tool, it's a naturally grounding instrument. So these dances to the drumming also evoke a natural connection to the earth and to the ground. So the movement is a way also to plug literally oneself into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And then in ancient times, this also would happen naturally outdoors and probably barefoot in nature, outside with sunshine and fresh air and all of that. Unless there was a specific ritual that could happen when somebody was in a state, and then that would happen indoors. And, there were many, many scenarios. So when I then discovered that, then I came across the School of Movement Medicine, which I mentioned before, which it was when I had cancer. And I knew at that point, that that was my door in, that was my journey in connection actually also with using voice. I know that with this powerful combination, they have a very similar component vibrationally, so to speak. So in movement medicine, also as a practice, we don't dance with a with a choreography, with steps, none of it. And there are many, many layers to it as well. For example, so let's speak now a little bit more about movement medicine, just to give a slightly different example compared to the drum or the grounding. When there is a beautiful setting, nowadays it happens also online. Myself, I don't do it. I don't like at the moment teaching online classes, but I have plenty of colleagues who do that. Or in a setting in person, the facilitator or the teacher, brings some music in, and then it becomes a meditation in movement. So what happens is that the teacher will bring in the space an inquiry, asking some questions in connection with music that usually is very carefully chosen. So what happens in that setting, it is, for example, that somebody may start to experience and investigate and explore an expansion in their vocabulary of expression. So they may start noticing that, oh, wow, there is, for example, a new movement coming in. I never moved in that way, or a new physical sensation. So this is an example I can offer in relationship to the fact that when we are able to do that when we move, that becomes also like a sort of gym, like a metaphor for life. Okay, I can move in a different way, on the dance floor. Therefore, I can move in a different way in life when certain circumstances are presented to me. So this could be an example. Another example could be related to the fact that, particularly in movement medicine, we dance a lot with the elements. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also, we're talking about a practice. So I want to bring in also this aspect because this word, starting with P, I feel is very important, which it means we practice something, we become acquainted with something through repetition. This is how we learn. This is how children learn. This is how hypnosis works, yeah, through repetition. So what does it mean for somebody, for example, to practice the dance of earth? It's not a script, What does it mean to you to move as earth? With your body as part of the earth, with your body as earth? What does it mean to you to move like water? What does it mean to you to dance like fire? What does it mean to you, to open your rib cage and open your arms and dance with air? Mm-hmm. So it's a very personal inquiry that brings in also the poetic aspect and allows the imagination to open up. And again, through repetition and inquiry, I can translate this question into my daily life. And I could say, okay, these are the circumstances that are presented to me. I need a little bit of fire. What do I need to do right now to activate a more fiery response, whether that is saying no or drawing a line, or in a situation like my present circumstances, for example, what do I need to do for myself to ensure that I'm grounded? So I am widening my base in my body for creating a grounded, expanded, fluid, expansive, and rooted experience.
Yeah, these metaphors are really powerful. The elements, mm-hmm. And you spoke a little bit about it there. It's this kind of it gives you a sort of set of tools that you can mm-hmm. use to take on an emotional situation or a work situation or relationship situation, whatever it is, a personal and interior situation, a physical situation, and it's like by embodying these mm-hmm. different elements, you have a different way of responding. So mm-hmm. If you're feeling all kind of disturbed and shaky and uncertain, and then grounding, then becoming earth can really kind of help to settle mm-hmm. you down. If you like you say, if you need to do some kind of quick action and respond mm-hmm. to something with some energy, then fire, bang. Or maybe you just need to flow mm-hmm. a moment. You need to kind mm-hmm. of loosen up, not be so hard and so stuck, and get a bit more liquid. Or perhaps you just need to be light. Mm-hmm. Quite sort of, distant from things or ease, just drift around a bit. So an important thing.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many. I mean, there are so many layers to these things.
So
Obviously,
so
I mean,
many,
we could
so
talk for
many.
hours just
I
about the
know.
elements, couldn't we?
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to kind of expand a few things like that for people
Mm-hmm.
who maybe have never had any
Mm-hmm.
contact with something like that. But they're all, I guess, they're all offering us opportunities to move in ways that perhaps we don't habitually do, because we
Mm-hmm.
might tend towards a certain way of moving. We might be quite an earthy person. I mean, I'm
Mm-hmm.
for sure very earth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's good for me to do, something like fire is probably quite alien to me and can be quite
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable when I'm around fireworks.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good to sometimes go to that place and
Mm-hmm.
become the thing that you're not comfortable with,
Mm-hmm.
kind of expand, the range of possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I kind of interrupted your flow.
Yeah,
Please
it's okay.
carry on.
Yeah, this can be a tool or a resource also when we are not able to respond in the moment, maybe because of the social setting or maybe because it's not safe. So it can offer us a creative outlet so that certain things, energies, or emotions don't stay stuck in our nervous system. So let's say, for example, because this practice, it is also trauma sensitive and trauma aware. Let's say, for example, some of us could have a lot of freeze response in our bodies. Yeah. So all of us suffered from trauma, different degrees and different situations. So there is this freeze energy, the system shuts down and certain branches of the nervous system activate, and this could lead, long term to disease and depression and lethargy, you name it.
So,
Yeah.
so to just kind of clear that, it's
Yeah.
so it's that kind of freezing the headlights response. Something happens and you just
Yes.
go, "Huh,"
Yes.
you hold your breath,
Yes. Yeah.
you probably clench in your body,
Yes.
and it becomes this kind of memory in the body
Yes. It
that
is
you may
exactly.
then keep accessing
Yeah.
when things get uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
over time, that kind of blockage, that kind of stuck energy,
Yeah.
can start to cause disease or
Yeah.
some sort of ailment
Yeah.
that repeats.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, because it lives in the nervous system. One of the contemporary definition of trauma, based on the work of Peter Levine and Irene Lyon and all the great, thinkers and masters of the last 30 years, who really brought trauma to the attention of the international community. This definition would say that trauma means a nervous system that is not regulated. So beside from the fact that we can speak about an event or an accident, but let's pick this definition for a second. So we can think about an animal in nature, small animal. Yeah, just to give an example related to what you said, that is chased by a predator. So that animal eventually will, even if it's captured or if it's about to be captured, could even play dead, as they say, right? So all system is going to shut down and certain organs are going to freeze and the blood, will need to, be distributed differently in the body until eventually this animal could manage to run away. There are some great videos on the internet actually of this animal. I can't remember what was. It was being chased, I think, by a lioness, and then some cheetahs, I think, could came in the picture, and that distracted the lioness. So the animal, from being dead frozen, woke up instantaneously and boom, ran away. Quite incredible. So this is what our bodies are designed to do. The nervous system is meant to be in this ebb and flow of activation and relaxation. And I don't want to go too much into detail now, but when that doesn't happen for life circumstances, when things are piled up, when there is no expression, when there is no outlet, when there is no regulation, or somebody could be exposed to various situations, all this stuff literally lives in our bodies. So movement, particularly movement that brings attention in a way that is also safe, helps helps to bring literally more possibility to frozen places, or attention to frozen places. And the movement also is not only external. When we speak about dance, um, sometimes we speak about a big, vigorous dance, big moves. And oftentimes we could end up moving in that way and then being disconnected from what we're feeling inside, in a movement that is more subtle and more internal, and a sensation that is more defined nowadays as interoception, which is the connection with inner sensation.
Okay.
So then we can find also moves or ways to connect to our body from the inside. And that means that,
That's a question of awareness. So the big
yes,
moves you're talking about, it's often that your awareness is outside,
yes,
maybe even the people around, and
yes,
you're kind of performing a little bit,
yes,
maybe. Whereas there's this other form of awareness where
yes,
you go internally, and it's nothing to do with anyone else or the outside. It's
yeah,
very much an inner experience.
yeah.
Okay.
Until it can become eventually another practice, because everything is practice, where we hold multidimensional awareness. So, for example, if I,
Simultaneously have
yes,
all of these
yes,
awarenesses. Yeah.
yes.
Hmm.
So I'm connected to myself. Also, I'm also connected to the space around me. That could be a metaphor for boundaries and my vital space. And I am connected also to the other dancers or to the big picture. And how do I enter in relationship with one without losing the other one? You know? And so our nervous system and the capacity of our nervous system also to be with stress, with grief, with rage widens once we lovingly, kindly, slowly bring attention to these places.
Mm.
So as I said, there are many, many, many
Yeah.
layers to
So,
it.
so I've had some experience of something called authentic movement. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you know about this yet,
Mm-hmm.
um, which very much is about letting the body. You're kind of getting into a place, and you're in a context which allows you to really just let the body move in the way it wants to move. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not you, oh, I'm going to move my arms around. You're
Mm-hmm.
thinking and then you're doing. It's a
Mm-hmm.
kind of quietening down to a point where the body starts to lead.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ideas being that it knows how it needs to move
Mm-hmm.
to realign everything,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of reset
Mm-hmm.
the nervous
Yes.
system. So it's this kind of the intelligence, the knowledge is in the body
Yes.
already,
Yes.
and it's
Yes.
kind of allowing it to show how
Yeah.
it needs to move to
Yeah.
kind of shift things and move.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the other thing, um, I've got experiences in is five rhythms, which
Mm-hmm. Of course. Yeah.
is a kind of journey of different
Yeah.
rhythms, which takes you. It sort of relates in a way metaphorically
Yeah.
to the elements, you know.
Yeah. I forgot to say actually that movement medicine, it is also rooted in five rhythms, because my
Right.
teachers, they were apprentices to Gabriel Roth for more than
Okay.
2 decades. So yeah,
Yeah.
she's in the lineage. Yeah.
But that thing of the body knowing what it needs to do,
Mm-hmm.
and if we, it's quite, you have to be able to get to that place where you can
Mm-hmm.
allow it, which is a whole practice in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the guidance of a good teacher or somebody
Mm-hmm.
experienced comes in, because they can kind of open you up to finding
Mm-hmm.
that place within yourself.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that,
Mm.
but it suddenly it came up because
Mm.
yeah. Um,
Yeah. Gabriel Roth, the creator of the five rhythms, she used to say, put the psyche in motion and it will heal itself. And through the five rhythms, actually, she understood, basically in a very simple way, how the nervous system works and how energy works, because everything is movement. We cannot be always in a state of activation on the peak. Yeah, this is how also how the balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system works. We need to be activated sometimes, and then we have to unwind and rest and relax, and then activate again, and then unwind and relax. And obviously, for many of us, also to be in the body, sometimes it hasn't been very safe. That's why many of us check out and space out, because it wasn't safe to be here. So it is also important to be very gentle, to do things in a way that is safe and, held wisely. And as you said, the body is designed to heal. The body always wants to heal. The psyche always wants to heal. And what happened also is that historically we located our intelligence in the head. Therefore, we are reclaiming another way to recenter ourselves and find our center of gravity in our belly, in our hips, while we, rebalance this whole thing and open up our hearts and come back home. So basically, this is also about making the journey. It's not about going out anywhere, because to be in a natural state of trance, I don't need to go on, another constellation. It's about being here, while being also open and aware and enchanted and awake, because all we have to do is just to look around. It's just we really forgot how to do that.
It's interesting you talk about the balancing. There's obviously these different systems. Obviously, in the West, we've got this idea of the brain running everything, but there is, of course, there's the three brain idea of the gut intelligence, the heart intelligence, as well as the head. But then you've also got the chakra system, which is even more kind of centers, if you like, energetic centers, maybe more subtle. So but this idea of balance, of kind of bringing these centers into harmony, and if one has been shut down or quietened, or we're avoiding it, like you're saying, maybe there's some fear around being in the body, or there's a lot of pain in the body, so you've learned to kind of avoid it, or there's a lot of emotional pain, maybe perhaps in your case where you'd kind of armored yourself or shut down that area because it was so overwhelming, or the kind of the mothering that you needed wasn't there, so you either had to kind of cut off that part of yourself that needed it, or somehow try to do it yourself, but obviously you're a small child, so there's all these kind of reasons why we might be out of balance. And we're living in a culture that pushes everything up into the head. So we're also being trained to think about everything rather than to use these other intelligences. So it's interesting to sort of hear about that movement is a way of bringing the balance and the harmony back to the center, to make a more healthy and whole experience.
Yeah, a friend of mine gave me a great example a few days ago. I was actually driving to my community of peers and colleagues, describing what was happening, and I had to travel and being aware of different parts. Yeah, the part that was scared, and the part was angry, and the part that was worried, all of it. And she offered me this beautiful image, and she said, yeah, and you're going there with the dancer in the middle. So the dancer is a creator, actually, and she or he is an artist, so we can basically dance with everything. We can be engaging with the dance and with any situation in life, which actually gives us the possibility to be much more creative, and look at things from different perspectives, and how it could be the jaguar dance in this situation. And we also dance with archetypes in movement medicine, with the dancing warrior, or with the wise elder, or with the fool, or with the wounded healer. And we dance also with the shadows, so we make also theater, the melodrama.
That because I'm interested in that. So
that's so much fun.
yeah, so there are all these characters, these archetypal human characters that you.
Yeah.
So this is like another version of the elements, but it's now much
Yes.
related to the human psyche and
Yeah.
those kind of roles.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell
Yeah.
us a bit about that.
Yeah, that's quite fun actually, because as you say, that these archetypal forces also are connected to the elements. And in movement medicine also we dance through a mandala. So there are many interesting stations and things, you know. And also oftentimes we used to dance in ceremony. So we would be a bunch of people, colleagues or apprentices, you know, together when that was possible. So for example, we would dance with the elements and with these archetypal forces. So what is, so to speak, the shadow side of air? It could be spaced out. So there are various possibilities also with the archetypes actually and the shadows. So we dance with these archetypes I mentioned before. So the dancing warrior, and the shadow side would be the persecutor. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
And then
the healthy role,
yes,
and then there's a kind of
yes,
the sort of psychotic role, or the
yeah,
pathological role is the better.
yeah,
Yeah,
or neurotical if you think
neurotic.
about it.
Yeah,
Thinking that each of us hold both spectrums.
sure.
Yeah. So this is not about transcending anything. The assumption to that we embrace in our work, it is that we are all of that. Yeah.
Well, this is really important. So it's
Yeah.
saying that all of this stuff is welcome. So instead
Yes.
of trying to push away your inner
Yes.
tyrant, your inner dictator,
Yeah.
get it out on the dance floor and let's see
Yeah.
what the moves are like.
With curiosity. With curiosity.
Sure, sure.
You know, and for example, so then we would have like the dancing fool, and the shadow of that would be the I'm sort of, it's funny because I'm picturing the dance floor right now, you know. And where was I? Give me a second. So the dancing warrior, and that would be the persecutor, the wise elder, and then the shadow side would be the rescuer, and then uh, the dancing fool and the shadow side would be the victim.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're talking about the triangle now, and then the copefront triangle, and then we have the wounded healer, and the shadow side would be the hungry ghost. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can dance with all of that, and it gets really creative and imaginative, you know, and it's so fun and liberating. So it has also a beautiful light component to it. And I remember that we were dancing also with other archetypes and metaphors related to the elements. So we were dancing with the shadow side of water, which we could say like melodrama. And as an Italian, I can tell you, I had a ball with that. It was fabulous. It was like making theater and being so utterly, you know, dramatic, and to see how much I had in my own makeup, that martyrdom and drama, whatever, that it was like also quite a revelation to see how much energy it had, you
Ah,
know?
yeah. Well,
So,
you're tapping in something there, that there are all these parts of ourselves that are in the shadow, that have been pushed down when we
mhm,
were growing up, or it wasn't welcome for whatever reason,
mhm,
and it's in there, and it's containing so much energy. There's so much
mhm.
energy which if it isn't released can start to harm. You know,
Yes.
some of that stuckness can become,
Mhm.
but when it is released, it's this incredibly energizing life
Yeah.
force. So
Yeah.
to kind of to express those parts, and to do it
Mhm.
physically and through dance and movement, and to do it in such a creative way, you know, so you're making something, you're creating, and at
Mhm.
the same time you're integrating and releasing
Yeah.
some kind of energy
Yeah.
which you then get to benefit from,
Yeah.
which,
Yeah. Yeah.
charges up your body.
Yeah.
What an
Yeah.
incredible thing
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
experiencing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm.
You know, is a way to embrace, to accept, to learn about being curious, you know, really to be really creative, I would say. And certain emotional states also have a quality. So to speak, you know, depression could be an energy that has a little bit of quality of collapse or shrinking. So we also work and dance and play with polarities, So if that energy, it's so constrictive, maybe through the energy of water, we also bring fluidity in the spine. So we also bring physically, literally movement to the places in our body where we are a little bit numb,
Right.
Or some of us also, fear anger. That's very typical. We are scared of our own anger. We are scared of our own power and fire because, historically it has been misused. We know how we can destroy, we can damage. So some of us withhold from using power because we think that we could do harm, and sometimes we don't want to do harm, even if then at the end we used to do it in a passive aggressive way. Hence the beauty also of playing with the elements to see certain aspects of ourselves that we are not aware of. So then anger, because anger is expansive, then if that is repressed, then we may need that expansion to be really physical through our limbs.
Yeah.
Because if
Make
that
yourself
energy
big. Make
has
yourself
been,
big.
yeah, if that energy has been constantly repressed and smashed down, we need to,
Press.
we need to practice physically, kinesthetically, to bring new memory in the muscle. There is a quote that we often share. I think it comes from a tribe of Indonesia that says, knowledge is a rumor is only a rumor until it lives in the muscle. So we need to bring this, because the body is denser, this new state of being. Basically, we are experimenting with a new way of being and doing. And we have to repeat that, because that memory through posture, whether I collapse or shrink or make myself invisible, it's a memory that lives in the way in which we are physically holding ourselves. I know that for myself, because now that I have more inner sensitivity, I started to notice more my tendency to collapse around my rib cage. So that is allowing me throughout the day to self-correct myself. I don't need to go to the dance floor once a week. It's like, okay, I'm collapsing.
Yeah,
Hold
you're
on.
noticing more and more. So this is
You
interesting
know.
that by practicing and doing these things, you start to develop more and more self-awareness, and you start to notice
Mm-hmm.
maybe, oh, like
Mm-hmm.
I'm sort of sitting a bit curled up there, and
Mm-hmm.
it becomes a habit. Then you develop a new habit where you
Mm-hmm.
are self-correcting a lot more, and obviously
Mm-hmm.
this, as well as kind of helping to sort of heal any trauma that's being held
Yeah.
continuously, it's
Yeah.
also preventing perhaps something new from landing, because when you do feel something, you notice it, and so instead of just holding on to it and repeating
Mm-hmm.
it and sort of setting it in concrete, you can maybe adjust and deal with it immediately and start to kind of loosen up that bit
Mm-hmm.
where you held on again. So it creates this positive feedback loop of,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
hmm,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
a really useful thing to be
Yeah.
carrying around.
Yeah. Yeah. And really is a way to tap into our resources. you
Mm.
know we all know so well our dramatic stories and what we did wrong and what I could have done better, and all of that. So it is a way also to make a choice and say, okay, what do I want to focus on,
Mm.
you know and strengthen that. We need that strength. We really need that, I think, collectively, particularly because of the
Yeah.
global
Well,
circumstances.
that brings up a question, which is, the reason why these practices developed in the first place, the reason why old traditional cultures had, every full moon you get together and do this ritual dance, and as you were talking about,
Mm.
everybody gets to kind of freak out once a year or whatever, is because they found after a long, long time that this was the way to
Mm-hmm.
keep the community healthy. So as we're kind of now going through this incredible time of crisis and shift and collapse of the old and all these new shoots emerging, what are you sort of hope for, or what do you see, or what would you like to see happen with a
Mm,
kind of a reintroduction of this kind of these kind of practices as part of communal
mm,
life, or are
mhm,
there any? I mean, we're really kind of learning now that we need to somehow rediscover community, aren't we? And there's
mhm.
lots of
For sure. For
experiments
sure.
all over the
Absolutely.
community, and
Absolutely.
this, these practices are part of that. So what are
Mhm.
your kind of personal wishes or thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, obviously now we are all in this situation where we are connecting online. So this is very unusual and unique also in terms of, dance practices. And there are many people doing that. And I was also about to say that before in this conversation between you and I, it happened at least a couple of times, that we both had goosebumps, we're saying something and it was happening simultaneously.
Mhm.
So this is very basic. And I was reflecting upon that also in the last few days because it is something that reminds me about the importance again of being present, of being in the body and listening to the signal, listening to the information. There is an intelligence there.
Mm.
I don't know exactly how we're going to shift, you know, because of the circumstances. I feel that at the moment there is another epidemic, and there is, another important thing at stake, which is mental health. So,
Probably that is the real epidemic,
mm,
in fact, because the COVID,
I
it's
know,
it's not as serious as it's been made out to be, really, actually. It's
I
more
know,
the psychological, mental reaction
I know,
showing us. It's a great mirror for
I
how
know,
broken our culture is. And that's the epidemic. And maybe
I
that's
know.
an opportunity as well. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. It's just that we are in the middle of it. So for those of us of our generation, probably we're closer to middle age or late 30, whatever, it's like, oh, it just feels really weird, I think that mental health is a priority. So my hope it is that we all find all the best ways possible to nourish ourselves, nourish each other, whether it's a conversation like this, whether it's possible to walk in a forest, whether it's possible to put feet in the water by the beach. Um, I think it's very impossible to reach out for help. So I cannot, stress this enough and ask for help when needed, because culturally we think so often that we have to just figure it out all by ourselves, and it's not like that. So particularly now, to reach out, ask for help, share something with a friend, even if it's something beautiful, it doesn't have to be necessarily a struggle, find ways to connect as
Connection.
much,
Yeah.
yeah, as much as
Connection, a
possible.
real
Yeah,
connection, an
yeah,
honest, open connection,
yeah.
whatever it's about. And
And then, yeah, absolutely. And then I would say move the body as much as possible, you know, and I know that connection online is not the same. I don't know when and how we will be able to go back to a place where I hope that we will be those ancestors, or we will be those people who are able to speak to the descendants when they will ask what did we do. I hope that they will live in a place where they can gather together, they can dream together, they can sing, they can play, they can breathe fresh air, they can drink, you know. I feel beautiful.
hmm. Well, here's the thing.
Clean
We
water,
are,
you know.
we are connecting a lot online, but as
Mhm,
we've just experienced and shown there, even when you're connecting online, you
mhm.
can connect physically and you can share physical sensations.
Yeah,
Tune into your body. It's actually happening even on a screen when you're talking. There is an energetic connection going on. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, if you can get outside, there's a whole living world
yes,
you connect with intimately that will
yes,
give you so much if you start to explore that connection.
yes,
So even
yes.
if you are on your own, you can always go out and talk to someone standing 20 paces away or whatever it is. And it's worth doing that anyway.
Yeah.
People in your community that perhaps you would never talk to, maybe now is a good time to
Yeah.
start a conversation in
Yeah.
the shopping queue or at the
Yeah.
supermarket. But
Yeah.
also explore what it might be to kind of communicate with the land around you. You know,
Yes.
even if you think that's all nonsense and it makes no sense at all, just, you know, for fun, go
Yes.
talk to a flower or a
Yeah.
grass, or lean
Yeah.
against a tree and tell it your problems, or ask it how
Yeah.
you're going to get kind of solve a particular problem that's going on. You know, just
Yeah.
for the hell of it, you know, what have
Yeah.
you got to lose?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you brought in two important components. One, it is intimacy, actually. So what I hear you saying, it is that we can find ways to restore intimacy
Yes,
with all living beings.
absolutely.
And also you brought in the aspect of humor and laughter, what the heck? We need to be also a little bit silly and not to take ourselves too seriously. So laughter and being a little bit silly and who cares? It's very important. Otherwise we could get buried under our own seriousness. But I really hope, and my prayer is that we go back to a place where we join together as a community for sharing the beauty, the grief, food, sharing seeds and cooking together and singing together and having children roaming free outside. This is what I hope for
Yeah.
humanity, and going a little bit more back to simplicity and living more locally, perhaps, and eating, food that is fresh from the land, and finding ways to be in kind and respectful connection with each other and with the earth, you know? Yeah.
Well, absolutely. I agree with all those thoughts. That's a really nice picture. You know, that's the vital stuff in life. That's what makes life beautiful, really. It,
Mm.
you know, if you can have a good relationship with yourself and you can get to know yourself and become aware and help yourself to work through any traumas or things that you are carrying, and at the same time can engage in community, and at the same time engage with the living land around you. You know, that's a recipe
Mm.
for a very, very rich existence. And it's all there. It's not, it doesn't require any special technology. You know, we have it already. It's
Yeah,
just about being human, isn't it?
I know.
It's
Yeah.
time for a kind of renaissance in being human
Hmm. Yeah.
and really kind of connecting back into what that means, because
Yeah.
it's our hidden wealth right now,
It is. Yeah, I feel
and
the
we
same.
all have it. If you're breathing, if you're alive, if you can hear me speak now, then you've got
Hmm.
it. You
Yeah, it's
carry it
true.
in you. So yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank
Yeah.
you very much. I feel
Thank
that
you.
that might be a good point then.
Thank you. Maybe I like to share a metaphor that a friend offered me, or
Go.
an image a friend offered me a few days ago. I said something like, "Yeah, I am in the concrete jungle," and she said to me, "Look at the dandelions in the cracks."
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Thank you.
Wow. Laura,
It
thank you very
was
much.
great. Very much
Yeah.
fun. Thank you.
I look forward to at some point dancing with you. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm gonna come to Spain to see Tom as soon as I
Ah,
can.
great.
So
Ah, great. Yeah.
I'll come and find you and say hello, and we can have a dance.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'd love to, you know, if you're ever doing anything over in England as well, any courses or anything, I'm quite interested in this
Thank
practice
you.
you're doing. Tell us,
Yeah.
just tell people
Yeah. So,
where they can
yeah.
find you. I will put that on the description.
Thank you. Yeah.
Tell
So,
us where they
yeah.
can
At
find
the
you.
moment, at the moment, I'm working more on one-on-one basis. So I offer a combination of um, somatic coaching, trauma-aware coaching, which blends in also movement and voice work and ritual. That's my thing really right now. And there are also colleagues of mine that can be found on the Movement Medicine Association for classes online. There are many all over the world in all languages. And my website, it's elementalsoulmedicine.com. It's not very updated because it doesn't reflect fully what I do right now, but people will have a sense of my vibe and who I am if they want to connect and work with me. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Well, and thank you for being so courageous and sharing your personal story as well,
Thank you.
which
Thank
I
you.
always feel it's always really moving and kind of inspiring for me to see somebody share their personal story, because I know it's always helpful for other people when somebody
Yeah.
shows up in that authentic way. So yeah, really, I'm really grateful for you.
Thank you. Same for me to have met you today. Thank you so much for your
All right.
time. Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah.